If you clicked on this video, then chances are you're either super sick and tired of being single, or you're just curious about what I'm going to talk about in this video. All right, guys, in today's video, we're going to talk about singleness. And what better day than Valentine's Day, okay? And maybe you're like me, you're just sort of sick and tired of scrolling through your Instagram stories and seeing how people are posting their chocolates and their flowers and their notes and whatever else, and you're like, okay, great, I'm sick of that. I'm deleting the app for the day. All right, I'm kidding, guys. I'm actually very happy in my singleness, which was not the case, okay? It was not always the case. I was actually very happy and content in my singleness. If there's anyone who's more qualified to talk to you about waiting on God, about singleness, about trusting the Lord, it is me, okay? I feel like I am an expert in this field, okay? And here's the thing, I've had many phases of singleness. I've had phases of recently post-breakup singleness. I've had phase of like, okay, I'm single, but I'm super unhappy about it. And I hate going to weddings, and I hate, anything that has to do with love, and because it makes me aware of my singleness. But now, guys, I'm finally in a phase in my life where I am truly content and happy where I am, because there is a meaning to my singleness, there's a purpose to my singleness, and I'm very passionate about this topic because I remember being that person who was like on YouTube, like watching every single video under the sun, about being a Christian and being content and being single, because in my head, those three terms did not go together. You hear me? Like, I was like, listen, it's impossible. It's impossible to be like, everybody's out here getting married, everybody's in a relationship, and for you to be single and content and filled with Jesus. That's just impossible. That's like one of those equations that do not work. But little did I know that it is not only possible to be single and content, it is possible to be thriving in your singleness. And that is something that I'm very passionate about, and that is something that I want to talk about to you guys and tell you that if you are one of these singles and you clicked on this video because you're super unhappy in your singleness, I hope I can convince you that it is possible to find real joy, real fulfillment. And, not that you don't want to be in a relationship, that you don't welcome marriage and all of that, but you're okay. You're totally okay to be on a path with the Lord and being full with the joy. So, and you might be like, Nadia, for how long actually have you been single? All right, so let's talk about it. And here's the thing, when I say, a long singleness, obviously I've dated people here and there, but what I consider, being in an actual relationship is if you've dated somebody for like at least 2 to 3 months, okay? For you to even call. If it's been less than that, then I'd say that was a situationship or whatever else, okay? Last time that I've been in an actual real relationship, I would say it's been like, like almost 8 years ago. Yeah, 8 years. So I've been single for 8 years. Overall, I've had a pretty long singleness. And I've had multiple phases of singleness. So the question is it possible to be content, to be victorious, to be filled with purpose and passion in your singleness, and really be, in a good place? Because you know what? Let's be honest. We have a culture, not only church culture that idealizes marriage, but also, a world culture that just idealizes just being in a relationship, period. It seems like it's really weird for you to be by yourself, not in a relationship, and just focusing on the things that God has you being focused on. So it is very easy, just not from just your own self, but just from situations, from people's comments, from your family, be like, oh, why don't you marry somebody? Why don't you find the right person? It's easy to start to look at marriage and make it the ultimate thing, to start idolizing it, and really assigning way more meaning and than it should. So it's a very easy thing to do. And here's the thing, you've got to stop it. If you want to be victorious, single, in Jesus, who loves the Lord, if you want to be someone who's filled with purpose, you have to cut it off. You have to cut off this idea that marriage, is going to solve everything, that marriage is finally going to make you happy. Having somebody by your side is finally going to add purpose to and meaning to your life. It's easier, when you have a relationship and you get married, you have kids, and, it seems like you know your role, you're a wife or your husband, you're a dad or your mom, and there's these things that follow, and you sort of like, oh, I guess this is my purpose in life. And this is why singleness, if you're a Christian, can be so uncomfortable, because you're like, okay, I don't have, a husband, let's say if you're a girl like me, right? I don't have kids. I'm not a mother. So is there a meaning to my life? Like, what am I supposed to do? Like, what is it? And good question. Why are you withholding? Because God never withholds from us nothing just by chance. God is not making you wait and just be a single for no reason. And this is how we're trained. We're trained to think that another person, having a family, and those are the things that are going to add meaning and purpose to your life, which they do. I don't want to minimize those things, because I do believe in people getting married and have kids and being mothers and fathers and whatnot, and raising the next generation. Like, I'm all about that. But I'm just going to say that ultimately the greatest purpose and the greatest thing that you should be running after is Christ. And what does God want you to do, for his kingdom? Asking that deeper question, what are you called for? And if God is giving you a prolonged season of singleness, you have to. That's the only way you can be content and happy and feeling like your life has meaning and purpose for the kingdom. If you're really asking questions about your calling, start focusing on asking the bigger question. Is it like, what am I here for? Why did you, God, created me for? I have a relationship with you. So Father, what would you have me do? Ask that question. If you want to be somebody who follows Jesus and is happy and content and thriving in their singleness, then you have to ask that question. You have to ask that deeper questions, like, what is my calling? What am I made for? Now, I want to read to you, like, I don't know, this has been like on my head so much, the verse in Jeremiah 1 verse 5, God says to Jeremiah, before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I set you apart. I appointed you as a prophet to the nations. So God's telling Jeremiah that even before you were aware of your own existence, I knew you. I knew the purpose and the calling that I had for your life. So if this is how God relates to Jeremiah, this is exactly how God relates to you as his child. So you have to ask yourself the question, God, what is it that you've appointed me for? Like, what have you created me to do? What is it that I'm equipped to do for your kingdom that is, beyond just, being a wife and a mother, especially if I have this, prolonged singleness. God, this is not time to waste. This is a time for me to figure out, what you would like me to do. And so asking that deeper question is so pivotal to having a thriving singleness. There's like a direct relationship with that, because unless you're asking, you're gonna just be lost. You're just gonna be constantly be like, okay, I don't have a husband, I don't have a kid, look at those people. You're gonna be constantly comparing your life, to other people's lives, comparing your timeline to their timeline. You're always gonna be discouraged and maybe depressed, like I was in the first part of my 20s. I was just kind of like really upset about the fact that here I am, going to all these weddings and everybody's getting together, all the people that I grew up with, all of them gotten married, and here I am on my solo island, and I have no idea, like, why am I still single? As far as I know, nothing's wrong with me. Like, I was asking those questions, and I literally had a period of where I was depressed about it, and I could not go to a wedding. I literally could not, because I was just, it made me sick. Like, it made me so aware of what I don't have. And I was bitter and I was resentful. And let me tell you, it took a moment, and it took God supernaturally healing my heart and revealing his call for my life. But it took about, like, I would say I was in this period where, I was going to church, I was doing the things, like I was not in sin or anything, but I had no joy. I had no thanksgiving. I was constantly bitter and complaining to God about how he has overlooked me and how he's not seeing my prayers, he's not hearing me. And it was a very dark place, and I was like reading every book under the sun, watching every YouTube video to try to fix my heart, and be like, what's wrong with me, And here's the thing, when I really surrendered to the Lord and I said, God, I can't do this anymore. Like, I just can't do this. Like, I don't know why I'm so unhappy. I'm trying to be happy. I'm trying to, but I definitely am not ignited about my faith. I'm not passionate about the gospel. I just am in a dark hole, Lord, and I don't know how to crawl out of it. I've tried everything. Listen, and one day, God, literally, I was in my room, and God, I was on my knees and I was praying, and I was not in some conference. I was not somewhere, like in some retreat, singles retreats or whatever, I was just in my room, and I was so honest and bare with the Lord. And let me tell you, when God just I can't even explain what happened in my heart, but I feel like it was one of those moments where the Holy Spirit just filled me. And I just had such a prayer with the Lord, and I felt like the presence of God just filled my room. Because let me tell you, after that moment when I got up, I was so full of joy. Like I just knew whoever I was before that moment and whatever state my heart was in and the brokenness that it was in and the loneliness that it was in, it has changed. Something has radically changed and I cannot logically explain it. But let me tell you guys, when I say I was so full of joy, I was so full of joy. I literally was like setting up these one-on-one dates with all of my friends because, I had to share with them what Jesus did in my heart. It's like, I don't know what happened to me, but I am so full of joy. Like I was on this high for like probably close to 2 weeks, and I just knew that darkness, that dark cloud that was over me, and in my heart, that bitterness, and I had unspeakable joy. I just had unspeakable joy. I literally, God forbid, but I literally thought to myself, like, Lord, is this what people on drugs feel like? Like, is this what they feel like? Because I don't know, but I just feel so much joy. It's like I went from being in this dark place, with my depression and just being so filled with joy and full of hope. And I wanted to tell everyone of the joy that I received in the Lord. And that is how God fixed my heart, So what I'm trying to say is that even if you're like me, where you're following God, you're doing the right things, even if you're not feeling joy and you're not having these emotions and you're not feeling God close, keep on persevering, keep walking, keep pursuing the Lord, keep being obedient. And I'm telling you, there is no such thing of you following God, putting everything upon his altar and God not come and meet you. And he will meet you and he will give you and he'll fill you with joy and contentment. And only after that happened in my life, God clarified to me my calling, what I'm good at and what he wants me to do. That is when I finally got the courage to create a YouTube channel, because I've had the dream and the hope of creating a YouTube channel for almost like a decade, for a very, very long time. But I just didn't have the courage. I didn't feel like, and when that moment happened for me, it's like I got ignited. I got on fire and I was like, God, I want the whole world to know of the joy and contentment and peace and wholeness that you can experience in having a relationship with Jesus. You don't have to have someone. You don't have to constantly be in kind of weird situationships when you're not in the right thing, just to give you a sense of worth. Because I know people who cannot be by themselves. They always have to be in some kind of relationship, whether that's a toxic relationship, not a toxic relationship. They always have to have someone, and they're miserable. But they rather be in something, that God does not really want for them than to be alone. I'm not saying that you're not going to have your moments where you're going to feel a little extra lonely, like Valentine's Day or whatever, but that depression that I was in, that resentment in which I was for a very long time, God can take you out of it. God can truly satisfy your soul. And when you're satisfied, only out of that satisfaction, that wholeness and contentment, can you truly look and evaluate someone, whether or not they can be a good spouse, for you and for the purpose that God has you on. Like, that's only then, not when you're in a relationship because you gotta have a relationship, but where, you're perfectly fine being alone, right? But if you're going to have a relationship, you're going to have a godly one, because that's literally, after following Jesus, whoever you marry, it's literally the second most important choice in your life. I wholeheartedly believe that. So there's a lot of weight. There's a lot to get wrong, if it's not the right decision. I honestly invite you, to pursue the heart of God. Seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness. Everything else will come into place. And this is the last part that I want to talk about in this video, is that focus not in looking for the right person, but being the right person yourself. That energy of like looking for someone, redirect that upon yourself and ask yourself, Lord, how can I become a person that can enrich somebody else's life? A person who can be a great cheerleader and helper if you're a woman in a man's life, right? Like, or if you are a man, like in a woman's life, right? Like how can I develop the qualities, and the set of traits and the set of, to really have the fruit of the spirit, where I can really understand another human being, right? Where I can really serve them, rather than, way too many people look at relationships, what can I gain from it? What can I get? They look at relationships from a place of deficiency. God wants you to look into relationships from a place of abundance, from a place of being filled with his love, from a place of being whole in him, that, you're overflowing into somebody else's life. Not because I'm so unhappy and I'm just like so sad. Let me see what I can hold on to and what I can grab onto. That is a wrong attitude. So, and here's the thing, you can look at your singleness, as this prison, as this cage, right? As this time of like, I'm alone. Or you can look at your singleness as a land of great opportunity. All the wonderful things that you can do for Jesus, where you can redirect energy, in bringing people to Jesus, going on missions, serving, finding ways, really asking, like I said, the questions of like, God, what am I good at? Like for instance, I was asking God, like, what am I good at? I've always known that I'm creative. I've always been somebody who always had a bent toward creativity, design and things like that. So like video editing became my thing. Like I really enjoy editing videos, right? For instance, I've always loved words, that's always in reading. That's been something that's been a big part of my life. I've always had a proclivity sort of, and the love for language, and so taking all those things, that have always been part of my life and turning them and using them for Jesus, And you might have completely different set of traits. For instance, like I remember when I wanted to be like, my whole dream was like, I wanted to sing for Jesus, and I'm not a singer. I'm just not a singer, right? Like, but I know how to write. I've been writing poetry. I don't do that as much, but I used to do spoken word. Like that's always been my gift. So I'm like, Lord, start asking those questions. Like, how did you wire me? What do you want me to do? What kind of vessel am I in your temple, in your kingdom? Like what are the set of traits that I have that I can be fruitful, that can bear fruit, not only in my character, like be fruitful in growing in the spirit, but also that I can be fruitful for others, so people can eat from my tree, right? Those are the questions that you ought to ask. Don't make your relationship status, whether you have someone or not, if you're married or single, don't make that the thing that defines you. Make your relationship with Jesus and your pursuit of the calling that he's made you for to be the ultimate thing, because that is the most important thing. To summarize, number one, don't idealize marriage and, being in a relationship. Don't make an idol out of that. Don't listen to people. People will always, it's so hard to block out people's voices. I know that from personal experience. Focus on your calling. Focus on pursuing what God has for you, asking the deeper questions. A lot of Christians don't ask those questions. They don't ask, like, oh, it's all about what God can do for them, instead of, God, what are your desires? What do you want me to do? Because you are in a relationship, and a relationship is a two-way street. God gave you everything. He died for you. So are you willing to die for him and advance his desires? And trust me, what God's desire always is the gospel, is the Great Commission, is to bring people and souls into a relationship with him. That's God's greatest desire. And are you passionate about that? Because if you say you are in the love relationship with the Lord, with Jesus, that is something that you naturally are passionate about. So, and finding the means of how to do that looks uniquely in the way that God made you, right? So asking that question, super important. And last is becoming the right person. And don't have that desperate energy of trying to find somebody who's going to add to your life. Focus on becoming somebody who will add so much value and so much purpose into somebody else's life. And having a vision of both of you being kingdom-minded people that you can create a great purpose for Jesus. So focus on that, and the right thing will come in accordance. Just like God knew Jeremiah, before he was aware of his own existence, God knows everything that he has for your life, your spouse, your kids, your family. God knows. In his providential timing, those things will come if they are within the will of God for your life, right? So continue to pursue him at 100%. Make him the greatest focus of your life. And everything else that's supposed to come into your life is not going to miss you. It's not going to bypass you. Whatever is meant for your life will come into your life organically. All right, guys, thank you so much. Hopefully you were encouraged with this video. I just felt like it was on my heart to just on Valentine's Day to make an encouraging message for all my singles. And hopefully you can be encouraged to love Jesus, to pursue his heart. Make Jesus your Valentine. You know what I'm saying? All right, thank you so much for watching this video, and I'll see you guys in the next video.